in 2021 Civic Engagement Guide webinar. We are so excited to have you all with us this afternoon as we dive into the conversation of civic engagement. Now, many people are thinking to themselves, it is not a presidential election year. Why are we having this conversation in 2021? Because the time to be engaged civically, the time to stand up and step out, the time to let your voice be heard in your community is always now. So we hope that you participate in the chat with us, that you ask the questions that matter most to you. And we encourage you to text a friend and share with them the information that you're gaining and gleaning in this session as we grow together. At this time, we are going to start our webinar, and I want to start off by saying that civic engagement is something that we prioritize here at the YWCA Hartford region as we continue to stand on our mission to eliminate racism and empower women. So Terry, let's get the PowerPoint started. Awesome. So as we dive into this conversation, you are going to hear the voices of myself. I am Melinda Johnson, the Director for Community Engagement and Advocacy, and I'll allow my colleague to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Terry Fitzgerald, and I am the Advocacy and Outreach Coordinator.
And as we shared, we are excited to continue on our mission to eliminate racism, empower women, and promote peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. The YWCA Hartford region was founded in 1867 and has continued on our mission to fight some of the most pressing issues in communities of color. These issues are issues of equity, issues of equality, issues of civil rights. Continued in this press for things like affordable housing, pay equity, and to combat gender-based violence. Today, in our conversation about civic engagement, we encourage you to consider this quote: "Real, sustainable community change requires the initiative and engagement of community members. Real, sustainable community change requires the initiative and engagement of community members."
So when we talk about community, and as Melinda just said, that, you know, it takes the community together to be engaged, what do you describe as your community? If you could enter in the chat a couple words, what's community to you? And it could be, you know, anything, your work, your school, your home, it could be geographically, it could be your place of worship. How do you describe community? And also, in a sentence or two, is there anything in your community where you'd like to see progress on? Mm-hmm. Add that to the chat as well, and Melinda will check out what people are entering. And
so people are saying, you know, community is a place where you have a sense of belonging. My neighbors, my city. Jason said all the above to what you said, Terry.
I was going to say, oftentimes we're members of many communities, not just one.
Right. So. Right. Shared purpose and belonging. So it seems to be that there are important concepts that we lift out here. Yvette says it's community is family, friends, church family, work family, and those we serve. Our beloved Patty Rusi is with us, and she says improving economic and educational opportunities and reduction of barriers to them. Yes. But community, resoundingly, what we're seeing from what's in the chat is community is a space of shared identity and shared experiences, that those are two essential components to community. It's a place of shared identity and shared experience. So we're going to move into watching a quick video that shares with us a little bit more about community, Because before we talk about civic engagement, we have to understand why we're getting engaged in the first place. Where is it that we desire to see change? And what are the outcomes of our engagement? What is it that we expect to see happen as a result of our engagement? And community plays a huge role in that.
The word community might bring to mind a variety of thoughts and images. Webster's dictionary defines community as a unified body of individuals with common interests, a common characteristic, or living in a common location. Reflecting on this definition might make you think that you belong to a number of different communities, which is probably correct. A community could be characterized by age group, ethnicity, gender, religion, location, or profession. As a high schooler, you belong to a community of students. You might also identify yourself as belonging to a certain racial community. If you attend a church, temple, or mosque, then you are part of a religious community. Living in a certain neighborhood or area makes you a member of a geographical community. You see, communities are sometimes overlapping, and one person can belong to a vast number of different communities all at once. You might be a member of some communities by default, while others you joined by choice. For example, you are a teenager and therefore are a member of the teen community whether you like it or not. You might also be a member of a soccer community because you enjoy and choose to participate in the sport of soccer. Sometimes other factors in our lives influence us to join certain communities as well. For example, a parent, friend, medical condition, or event. Regardless of the community you are a part of, or the reason you joined, every community has resources that help to fulfill its needs. These resources are known as community assets. Community assets include positive activities, facilities, and services that help to keep its members healthy. Some examples of community assets might be a meditation garden, fitness center, library, hospital, park, or playground. Which community assets are available to you in your area? It is obviously beneficial to have a large variety of assets in your community. Just as important as the number of assets, however, is how they work together to serve the community. Collaboration amongst people and the efficient use of the resources of a community can maximize the benefits to its members. How does your community work together to serve its people?
So this video brought up some really important points. It shared with us the importance of one, being able to identify our community, acknowledging that sometimes our community, our identities in our community overlap with multiple communities, much like Kathleen shared in the chat, saying that we should be able to see each other as members of a larger community, as neighbors and as equals. But it also shared that each community has its assets, something in place that helps keep those community members healthy. And so at this point, as we go into looking at some of the types of civic engagement, I want you to enter into the chat what you consider the assets of your community. Again, community can be defined by your geographic area, by a portion of your identity, but what are some of the assets of your community? While you're thinking about it and entering in the chat, I'll share with you, and Terry will share her sentiments as well, that I identify in my community, the North Hartford area. I'm a resident of the North Hartford area. I also identify my community with my church family, and I also identify my community with the West Indian community. And in those communities, some overlapping assets that we have in those areas, I see as my faith. Faith is definitely an overlapping asset that we see, something that supports our communities in hard times. And something else that I've seen as a strength in all three of those communities that I identify with is a sense of family. That is something that keeps us healthy, and that is something that is shared. Terry, any thoughts on the assets of your community?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely consider family part of my community, like my extended family, the geographically where I live. But I think most importantly for me is work, my coworkers, and Hartford in general, or the greater Hartford area that, where we work, and I feel very connected to.
Awesome. Patricia mentions large green spaces and frequent open activities like concerts, mural paintings, rallies on the green in New Haven. Definitely those things that keep our communities healthy, especially in the summertime where we can finally get out and enjoy one another post-pandemic, or as we're moving into a post-pandemic phase, we hope, fingers crossed. And so yes, all of those things are the elements that make our community healthy. Now here, when we think about civic engagement, we think about ways that we can participate in our community to help sustain some of that healthiness. Civic learning is one of those ways. Community service and volunteerism, political engagement, activism and advocacy, as well as philanthropy and fundraising. So
now we're gonna sort of break down each area. So we'll start with civic learning. And I'm not going to read through everything that's on the screen, but we're just going to generally speak to this topic. And learning about your community and the ways that you can be involved and engaged, it allows you to be informed and be part of something that's bigger than yourself, and to connect with members of your community and the world in general. By reading and exploring different areas, it gives you, a way of learning from different perspectives than your own. So all those perspectives together, as the community can come together and find a solution to an issue that you may be wanting to tackle. And it also just, challenges your viewpoint by helping you understand someone else's point of view and someone else's belief or opinion. And as a community, to come together and have all those different perspectives, I think is what can be a great asset within that community to come to a solution with, I don't want to just say issues, but just as the community coming together for the betterment of the community. It's really important to have all that different perspective. And by, as the slide says, reading, from different perspectives, that it just helps you understand the totality of where people are coming from.
Definitely. So staying informed is essential to civic learning, and so is knowing your political landscape. When people come together for demonstrations and discussions, the power to create change can be immense. Everybody has a voice on the political issues that are being debated in government. So stay up to date on the news from both perspectives on the issues. Now, so when we talk about staying up to date on both perspectives, sometimes that's political perspectives from both sides of the aisle. And sometimes it's really just issue-based and seeing where people stand on both sides, so that you're well informed on how the conversation is taking place in your community. Stay aware of the effects that lawmakers' decisions can have on you and your community. And above all, hold government accountable. Why is it essential to know who's your representative, who's your legislator, who's your governor, who's your mayor, who's on your town council? Because these are the individuals that have been elected to serve you. And if you don't know who they are, then how can you keep them accountable?
Okay. Next, we're going to go into community service and volunteerism. I think volunteering allows you to connect with people in your community, and as a group together, make it a better place for everyone. And so it benefits you, it benefits the community, your family, and the cause that you're choosing to help, if it's a specific charity or if it's just a community project that you're working on. And dedicating your time, hey, you make new friends, you expand your network, and you boost your social skills. So it's not just the benefit of the charity you're working for, or even just improving your community. I think in general, people are improving themselves. I mean, you often hear people say that they get more from giving than they're actually giving. They're getting so much back from the experience of being with community.
So oftentimes when we talk about building community service and volunteerism, it can feel like individually our efforts are like pennies in a wishing well. But when you contribute together toward a common good, there's larger impact. So participating in society by volunteering, contributing resources, and getting involved in the life of civil society at an early age is the best way to raise a generation of civically engaged adults. So for some of us, we are already at the age of adulthood, and it takes some retraining, some re-understanding of how we play a role in our larger society for us to get civically engaged in volunteerism. But for many of us, we also play a role in the life of the next generation, whether you're an aunt, an uncle, a teacher, a mentor, a mother, a father. And teaching our next generation, our youth, to be civically engaged gives us a promise of a better future.
So as an example of community service, we want people to think about it's not how much you give, but how you give and the impact that it has on the community. You know, people coming together for the benefit of the community. So as an example here, we're showcasing or highlighting Habitat for Humanity in this area. So through this organization, they have been able to serve, you know, hundreds of families, and they've engaged thousands of volunteers. And not only do they help the families by building these homes, it helps the area. So 34, million added to the tax base in Hartford County, and multiple homes built across multiple towns. And so it's not just that one family who's benefiting from receiving that home, because it filters across the community, and it shows that it improves or it gets people into home ownership that may not have been able to prior to having this opportunity. And paying so much of our living expense, it goes to home, whether it's rent or home ownership. So if you're spending that much of your income, why not let it be in something that's going to build equity for you and your family? And it also showed that volunteering increases volunteerism. So Habitat Humanity volunteers, 51% of them have volunteered in the past year, as compared to just 32%. And just a quick highlight on that Habitat does every year. They do a Women Build event at each spring, where people pay $150 for the privilege of being able to build and join this community effort. And that has the potential to bring so much money, which in turn gets folded back into the organization and into the community.
So here's one we're more familiar with when we talk about civic engagement: voting, the power of the ballot. An engaged citizenry is often considered a sign of a healthy democracy. High levels of political and civic participation increase the likelihood that the voices of ordinary citizens will be heard in important debates. You can participate in politics, either by volunteering for or donating to a campaign, attending protests or meetings, contacting officials, or expressing your views on social media, and most importantly, by voting. Make sure you know the status of your vote. Make sure you are an active voter, you are registered and ready to go, and make sure you are informed on the topics and the issues that matter most to you, and where the candidates that you support stand on that issue.
Okay, part of political, oh no, this is part of yours. Sorry.
No, go for it.
Yep. So just a couple more points on political engagement, as Melinda was saying. of knowing what's on your ballot, paying attention to deadlines, double checking right before an election or before a primary that you're registered and all is ready. And then one big one, if you don't like what you're seeing out there, you can run for office and use your
Say it again, Terry.
represent your community.
Run for office. Too often we think that we are unqualified for office by some determinants that we have never really fully investigated. The truth is, the average citizen is the voice that needs to be in office. So take that into deep consideration for you, for your loved ones, for those that you know, that running for office is an option to every qualified citizen. And every citizen is qualified.
Yeah, those different perspectives are needed. So activism and advocacy, when we think about those two words, so to be an activist is to act on behalf of solving a social or political issue and creating real systemic change. To be an advocate is to listen and learn about social and political issues, shed light on the problems occurring in society, and amplify solutions to those issues. So everyone coming together, listening, what does the community need? How can we move an issue forward? And once again, having all those different perspectives of the community is probably the best way to ensure success in tackling it in the best way that benefits everyone. So different ways that, you can become involved with your community is hosting a debate watch party, connecting with the community through writing an op-ed in your local newspaper, advocating for civic engagement in your schools. Each town must look into whether your school offers civic engagement, because some do not. So there's a variety of ways that you can use your activism and your advocacy.
So we're going to look at an extreme example. Something we've all probably been hearing a lot about is cancel culture. And there's pros and cons to this concept. So cancel culture shows us that our voice, our collective voice, has the power to establish standards against offensive and oppressive trends in mainstream culture. So sometimes we've seen cancel culture in very drastic and negative ways take place. And sometimes we've seen cancel culture show up in ways that were really supportive when a community clearly defined its standards on an issue. Ultimately, what we're talking about is calling in, speaking to an individual privately about their perceived and harmful and or problematic actions or opinions while allowing them to learn, grow, and change. This is the first step. This is where we always want to initiate change, is calling someone in. Calling out. Sometimes individual relationships are not the issue. Sometimes it's a larger organization or body. So criticizing an individual or organization publicly, usually on social media. Again, we've seen this done very negatively, but instead of criticizing, we can do constructive work about educating organizations on why the material that they've put out is offensive. Boycotting, withholding financial support from a company in order to force change within that company's policies or practices. Sometimes what we can't accomplish with our words, we certainly can accomplish with our dollars. And your dollars have the ability to make an important statement on where you stand on a specific issue. And lastly, canceling, which is a collective attempt at ruining the reputation and livelihood of an individual or organization in response to a problematic or harmful action or opinion. So again, we've seen this done very negatively and sometimes very disruptively, but there are certainly constructive ways of us allowing an organization to recognize that bodies of individuals will not support harmful behaviors.
So philanthropy and fundraising. Philanthropy can be described as charity, helping someone, giving to someone or a cause, or doing good for the community. Fundraising is collecting money for a specific cause or doing good for the community as well. but you can decide what kind of impact you want to have, and how you want to spend your time, your money, whether it's caring for your community, using your wealth to impact causes you care about. You can spend your money the way it lines up with what matters to you most. So as Melinda said, that, you know, you can do it in a good way. You can contribute to a cause that matters to you. But also, if there is an organization that is doing harm to the community by withholding funds from them, not donating to them, or not purchasing their product, that is a way of using your money intentionally.
So the example that we see here is one that shows communities showing up for the good. So those impacted by this tragedy came together and created change. You can use your dollars and time to fund the good in your community by supporting grassroots organizations. One of the hardest tragedies Connecticut has been faced with in our time has been the Sandy Hook incident that took place several years ago. But since that time, we saw those that were directly impacted by that tragedy turn their pain into something constructive for their community. And we saw others, allies from all over the state and throughout the country, who aligned themselves with that pain, show up in the way of donating and saying, this is how we want to see change made in our community, and here's what we're willing to fund. So again, oftentimes we feel like our efforts, especially our dollars, aren't large enough to make the kind of impact that we want to see, but collectively we can move mountains.
So civic engagement, it benefits the interests of your community in a variety of ways. Probably the most is an improved quality of life for everyone in the community, and that it's the goal of, you know, being engaged in your community. So everyone feels part of it and feels that they have a healthy, happy lifestyle within that community. This improves quality of life in so many different ways, and it affects each community member in a different way. So it may improve your life in one way and someone else's in another, but the greater good is that it's creating powerful change for everyone. So by being engaged, you're investing in your community. And that's what civic engagement is, the investment. It's you investing in the place that you call community, whatever that happens to be, and knowing that your participation is for the greater good. It's, you know, it's going to help you, but it's going to help the people you call community.
So we began with a quote on civic engagement, ending with another one. To be a truly involved citizen, we must reconnect with our founding documents. We must learn and practice the skills of civic participation, beginning with voting and moving on to legislating, speaking out, and building coalitions to solve problems on the local, state, and federal levels. So civic engagement is not a once every few years thing. It is really developing a way of engaging your society. It's really a decision about how you want to show up and how much voice you want to have and how things function in the spaces where you are most impacted. Civic engagement goes beyond just the ballot, and it walks into how we engage our systems of education, how we engage our systems of healthcare, how we engage those major institutions and stakeholders that are at the foundation of how our community and our society more broadly functions. So we're going to watch another quick video that really sums up some of the highlights and points that we shared regarding civic engagement and gives us just a few more nuggets to consider.
No place on earth is perfect. Every community has a unique set of problems. Problems like corruption, pollution, unequal access to education, scarce affordable housing, hunger, or lack of quality health care. So whose job is it to solve these problems? Local government? Businesses? Nonprofits or NGOs? Academic institutions? All of these sectors are important in a healthy society, but even if they wanted to, no single sector could solve all of a community's problems. That's why communities need individuals who are also working to solve local problems. It's called civic engagement. It's anytime someone takes action to better their community and encourages others to do it too. Authentic civic engagement is built on a shared understanding of community needs and a deep commitment to collaboration. Vibrant democracies create space for and encourage civic engagement. And when people make it their priority to engage, democracy is strengthened. Civic engagement takes many forms. It can be political, but it also looks like volunteering, joining a local organization, raising money for causes you care about, or using your voice to advocate. Anyone can be a civic leader. Change happens when ordinary people show up with compassion and courage. And together, we can form a powerful force for the creation of thriving, just, and free societies.
So we encourage you to stay civically engaged with us as we continue on our mission to eliminate racism, empower women, and promote peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. We know that we stand at, yet again, the precipice of another historic moment where, as the pandemic is coming to a lull, it seems, and we are seeming to have moved to a new space, and we are reconsidering how we engage our society. Many are reconsidering how they will go back to work and what that will look like. Youth are reconsidering what it's going to look like to go back to school. We encourage you to also take into consideration, what will your civic engagement look like on the other side of this social anomaly that we have faced for more than 18 months now? We encourage you to further this work with us by registering for our Civic Engagement Challenge, where the concepts that you saw presented today will be turned into action items that you can take over the course of 5 weeks. So our Civic Engagement Challenge will take place July 26th through July 30th. And the registration for this will, a link will be dropped into the chat at the end of our conversation today. And additionally, you can find it on our website and social media. At this time, we are going to open up for any questions that you all have. We encourage you to drop any questions in the chat. You all have been an extraordinary engaged audience and keeping the chat alive. If you have any questions at this time, we encourage you to put those in the chat as we prepare to enter into the chat the registration for our Civic Engagement Challenge. And there we have it. Awesome. And if there are no questions, then again, we encourage you to stay engaged with us with our challenge. We also encourage you to register online. And we thank you for your continued dedication to standing with the YW as we stand on our mission to eliminate racism and empower women. All right, we have a few questions. So we see here a question that says, how has civic engagement participation changed as a result of everything being virtual due to the pandemic? Marinda, that's a phenomenal question. Thank you for asking that. I will say from our stance as an organization, what we have seen is actually people now having accessibility in spaces for civic engagement that they might not have had before. So one of the ways this has been exampled for us in our Department of Community Engagement and Advocacy is we recognize that this year our legislative session was both a long session and historically it was a virtual session. And we thought this would be an obstacle for people engaging in the political process as far as being able to testify and being able to get in contact with their legislators. But instead, what we saw through the virtual process is that individuals, your average Jane and Joes that were going about their day that traditionally wouldn't be able to take time off to allow their voices to be heard in public testimony on bills and issues that matter to them, we're now able to go about their day as usual and have on their tablets, their phones, their other devices, the conversations and the public hearings that were taking place. So we recognize that this virtual platform that we had during the pandemic actually had its pluses, and it allowed a little bit more accessibility in the space of the public hearings. And we have another question here. There's a lot to celebrate from the 2021 legislative session. Which legislative victory are you most proud of? What's the next for the YWCA? Marinda, you are full of the good questions and I appreciate it. So this legislative session, we certainly did have quite a few wins, and the wins that we had were really due to the community having the opportunity to let their voices be heard on the issues that matter most to them. And so some of those include one of the first bills to be passed in legislative session, the Crown Act, creating a respectful and open world for natural hair. This added to the books the definition of discrimination based on race and added to it hair textures and styles traditionally associated with race. So now individuals at work, in public spaces, at school can no longer be discriminated based on their natural hair texture and style as it is associated with their race. This particularly affected people of the African diaspora, women of color, children of color, and men of color. And so we were very excited about that. Additionally, we worked on racism as a public health crisis, which was declared through Senate Bill 1, which is a comprehensive healthcare bill that came out of the Health Committee. And we are excited about that work. And we look forward to expanding on our initiatives in the space of women's healthcare. That bill also added a definition to doula services and scope of work for doula services, because we are also involved with a Connecticut Doula Coalition, which is pushing for doulas to be reimbursed through Medicaid. And that has been a process. And part of that process was getting a definition on the books and outlining a scope of work. So we look forward to taking what we've won in legislation and creating more conversations around it in our community, because what's on the books is only as good as the awareness of it, and then tailoring some of our initiatives to support that work. So thank you for that question. Aaron, I see you have a question from our sister YWCA in Greenwich. How do you recommend communities move from recognizing assets to using them to build a community vision that supports equity? Well, I'll say this, that comes from some really important work that's done by some backbone individuals, and those individuals are called community organizers. And what community organizing is really a space for community members to build relationships on their shared experiences, both in the space of creating solutions and identifying issues. And so through community organizing, which is something the YW has partnered with several community organizing organizations to move issues forward, through community organizing, people are able to do some power mapping where they analyze their assets and are able to identify how they leverage those services, those programs, those organizations in support of the solutions that they want to move forward in their community. So more than anything, I think what I'm saying is, if you see an issue and you're feeling a solution in your heart and you're recognizing that what you're experiencing impacts more individuals than just yourself, it's time to get organized. It's time to contact those individuals that you care about that are impacted by the issue the way that you are and get organized around it. And there are community organizers that can assist with that work. All right, we'll give pause for any other questions. Okay, and seeing none, we thank you all for your participation on today, for attending with us, for supporting, for being engaged. And we are excited not just for you to engage with us in our community engagement challenge coming up, but we're excited to see the change that you'll be making in your community. And you can count on the YWCA as a partner to support that change. Thank you.